Okay, on the show today, Jessica Dibb, so ahead of the conference, Jessica Dibb, who is the founder and spiritual director of the Inspirational Consciousness School, and also is co-director of the Global Professional Breathwork Alliance. Many teachers at many places like Kripalu, is that how it's pronounced? I know it's quite a well-known place. Kripalu, that's it. Omega, and comes highly recommended to me. I wanted to get to know her a little bit myself ahead of the conference. So, Jessica, welcome.
Thank you so much, Mark. It's really a delight and actually an honor. I just came across your work a few years ago, and I've always meant to be in touch with you because the embodiment piece is so critical for the healing of our species and being able to keep this, have this world literally survive. So I just feel like this is divine providence here.
Well, it's certainly a pleasure. And it looks lovely where you are in Maryland, right? And I can hear the birds, and there's a beautiful tree behind you. It looks absolutely gorgeous. Looks like a nice location. Yeah,
this is where Inspiration Consciousness School is. And when it was founded, 25 or more years ago, I felt deeply that I had a lot of friends, and myself included, that had spent time in ashrams, had spent time in places of deep, intensive spiritual study. And my feeling was that I wanted to create such a place that was ecumenical, where atheists and agnostics and people of every faith, and also just their own emergent spirituality, could come and then, go back, like just immediately go back to their, plumbing that they do, or they're walking through the hospital floors of Johns Hopkins, being a researcher or a doctor, and that we would do the kind of intensive, mystical, embodied work that would be done, in a Tibetan monastery, but do it right here in, the midst of daily life. And so somehow this beautiful place showed up right here in the middle of Maryland, just outside of Baltimore.
I'd love to find out a bit more about you and how you kind of got there. So where did this all start for you, Jessica? What was the time when you thought, what was the beginning of your journey?
Well, Mark, I would like to say that the beginning of all of our journeys is when we take that first breath. And I think I'm not just being metaphorical. The more that we learn about the science, of course, we know just even metaphorically that with our breath, without breath, nothing else happens. And what we're learning is that memory, as you know from your embodiment work, is encoded. And so literally the quality of our first breath, our internal and external environment, all of it makes a difference, and we can continuously reset. So I actually feel that from a very young age, I remember experiencing, like I would look at someone like you or my mother or my father or my brothers and sisters, my friends, my teachers, and I would feel like every person really just wanted to experience being love, like they wanted to give love, to receive love, to be love, and that love wanted to be given in some unique, creative way, whether it was through, baking bread or plumbing or, discovering something or, whatever it was that they were doing. And I remember feeling really sad because I could see that we were afraid and that we didn't have permission, in a sense, to be wildly alive. So it really began back there for me. And I took this very beautiful kind of pilgrimage, grail kind of journey throughout my life where, first I thought it would be ballet. It was so beautiful. I was lit up with it. And I thought, well, the world just needs beauty. So I kind of went a deep dive into that in New York City and dancing with the Royal Ballet, the Bolshoi Ballet. It was really deeply part of my soul. But I saw eventually that it wasn't going to speak to enough people. And so I think that's when I really started to feel like, what is it that could speak to everyone? What would be that unifying possibility because everyone is this unique emanation of this incredible love that I'm seeing within everybody. And so, for a while I went I lived in India for 6 months, and pilgrimage there. I lived in an ashram for 4 years. I then was a pre-med major at the University of California at Irvine. I wanted to be a doctor because I felt like if I got that credential, then I could, practice all these other things with people that I was learning. And then I had my son, and I had him when I was quite young in college. And I realized that, there was no way I was going to go to medical school while he was a little boy, and because he would only have that one time period with me. And somehow in the midst of all of that, I just had this epiphany that it was something about the breath. And I had been practicing pranayama for years and years and years, and through yoga and all my deep yoga practices in the ashram. But I did this breath work with a psychologist of these kind of deeper soul level breathings where you really open up to the depth of your potential. And I just saw in a kind of almost like eureka moment that this was something everybody had access to. It was our greatest treasure. It was right within our own chest. And I just remember sort of going on this search for how we could make that accessible and available to everybody, to know the power of conscious breathing. And I wanted people to be able to not have to leave their lives or think that it was something that was a fringe thing. And so this Inspiration Consciousness School grew up out of that, and it's a deep bow to all the beings that have ever contributed to consciousness and embodiment and breath and awakening and all of that. We're constantly taking in, from everybody past, present, and future, and trying to create a place here where, again, regardless of a person's any kind of spiritual orientation, including atheism, they can feel that they can feel that they themselves are a unique contribution to the planet, and that we can create the conditions where they are free, literally, to explore whatever they need to, so that they can awaken those latent potentials.
Okay, so we just moved inside there, Jessica. The birds were very beautiful, but a little bit loud. So listeners might notice it's got quieter. So you were talking about your sort of background there. Tell us more about the breath work. What kind of breath work do you enjoy teaching?
I really honor the entire field of breathwork. Breathwork is a spectrum of practices that goes from sort of simple reset kind of breathing that resets cortisol, produces relaxation, stimulates polyvagal function and all of that, to awareness practices that build capacity for focus and also for letting go of what is actually not needed, and of inhabiting and embodying what we're doing, to therapeutic modalities that are actually meant to do things like heal specific physical ailments or emotional imbalances, even trauma, to things that are actually meant to cultivate like qualities of a human being, like compassion, open-heartedness, strength, power, these things were these very deep, kind of like a lot of the Buddhist stuff. And then at the far end of the spectrum, we have these breathwork practices that, they all have a similar feature, whether what I do is called integrative breathwork, and I can explain a little bit about that, but also like holotropic breathwork, rebirthing, liberation breathing, vivation, therapeutic breathwork, all biodynamic breathwork, all of those kinds of breathworks are a kind of allowing the breath to unwind all of the places in our psyche, our body, our heart, our awareness, and our spirit that are bound from either fear or trauma or just unattended, unattended emotional needs, unattended physical needs, and then energize the life urge, the life force in the body, in the heart, in awareness, and in the spirit. And so that's I use all of the breath work. I use all of the field of the whole spectrum of practices for people. And when we really want to do the deep transformational work, we'll go to integrative breathwork.
Okay, so you want to tell us a little bit about that particular modality?
Yeah. So, building on the great giants of the 20th century that kind of rediscovered the power of breath, people like Leonard Orr and Stan Grof and others, and began to shape it in a way that could address the multidimensionality of human beings, which is, I think, one of the things that ails us the most, is that we try to live these lives that are productive, but the production is in a very narrow band. And so we're sort of we're kind of homesick for all of these deeper and more the imaginal realm, the soul level realm, and even embodiment, as you've been a big proponent of. Like, we've really created a schism, a split between awareness, self, soma, psyche, soul, and soma. And this is one of the greatest tragedies. So for me, building on things that all these people did during the 20th century, I'm really seeing how if we bring together the great wisdom down through the ages of these lineages that really helped people build within themselves an infrastructure, if you will, a body, a nervous system, a heart, a relaxed and open and available heart, pure awareness, big mind. If we could bring together the cultivation and development, the awareness of how to do that with a human being, with the power of this deep integrative breathing, we could embody more quickly these states of consciousness in a lived life. And so for me, why I call it integrative breathwork is that it's not like a particular technique. We give people a few guidelines when they go into the breath. And then our task is to find the life urge in that person, to have them find the life urge, and then to kind of midwife that life urge to be the healer and keep on moving through the different layers of things that need to be attended to at the emotional, physical, cognitive, and spiritual level. And so I love the fact that there is somatic intelligence, and you're a big proponent of that. Like, we've really underestimated that. I think it's equivalent to emotional intelligence. And so there is emotional intelligence, and there's awareness, pure awareness, and cognitive intelligence. And then there is, of course, the dimension of, let's just say, spirit or soul or essence, or whatever that you'd like to call it. And I think that what we try to do with breath work is have people access those non-ordinary states of consciousness that happen, in those deeper realms. And we have them experience simultaneously to really stay in the body, to not leave the body while these things are happening, so that the nervous system and the body become this finely tuned vehicle for non-ordinary states of consciousness, which I believe is needed for the human species to make the kinds of quantum shifts that we need to make in order to care for everybody, to address inequities, oppression, and most of all, of course, to realize our essential intrinsic belonging to the planet, and to be able to develop and create the ways of relating to the planet and each other that are going to, you know, just make all the potential that we are possible, and not take down 200 species a day with us the way we've been doing. So integrative breathwork is this deep kind of connected breathing that finds the life force in that person. And then they are supported by the breathworker. Integrated breathworkers are, by the way, highly trained people. I mean, we have psychotherapists, for instance, that do our course that say the work is far more rigorous, and the breathworker trained anywhere from 3 to 7 years. And so they're trained to travel with the psyche, whether it's trauma, emotional imbalance, depression, potential need, whatever it may be. They're trained to work with very distinctive and differentiated kinds of mystical experiences, non-ordinary states of consciousness experiences, things that people have yearned for, you know, throughout time. They're trained to really facilitate people in staying very in touch with their body and during the breath work, so that they're reading the body in the same way that they might after, you know, 10 or 15 years of mindfulness meditation, where you can literally feel, you know, minute things in the body. And also to connect cognitive awareness, like how does this actually change our orientation towards self, other, and the world? And we basically just let it rip, doing with all of those things happening, and really trust. You know, I like to say that Jesus was not a Christian and Buddha wasn't really a Buddhist. You know, these are people that had spontaneous experiences of contact with, you know, the primordial force, with the Big Bang, with, you know, whatever it is, and their unique emanation in it. And so I think there are 7.5 billion paths of awakening on the planet, and we're just trying to serve that.